Hello, welcome. It's Pauline with you again, and we're with episode number 10 of the ExQISSite Quilt Program that we're running for you, showing you all about how to quilt without free motion quilting, as hopefully you've been watching those lessons because that's very exciting, and we're getting some great comments on that and answering questions on how people can set up their machine. So keep those questions coming. We love them. But we're now up to making the sashings to get ready to join the quilt together. And this is where it gets very, very excited. So hopefully you've got all your blocks quilted. Now, whether they're quilted the same as mine or you've quilted them differently, that is perfectly okay. You will note that I have not trimmed any of my blocks back yet. I'm going to introduce you to the different sashings to start with to get our measurements. Then later on down the track, once we've got a few sashings made, we'll start trimming the blocks. So that'll be a totally different episode. But I hope you've enjoyed the journey so far. Let me just get this out of the road. Now, I just want to talk about the tools, and you know I'm a tool-based person because I believe having the right tool for the job, it's like a carpenter. If we've got the right tools, we're going to get the best result we possibly can. Just to go through a few of them, when I start giving you all the instructions for the different sashings, and just to let you know, the sashings, it's like a sampler package. I didn't want to make the sashings all the same for this quilt. I just wanted you to learn as many different styles of sashings for Quilt as you go as what I could possibly teach you in this episode. Because we have to approach them so differently to when we join blocks together normally and just join block to block and then we quilt the whole quilt after we're finished. This has to be approached so differently. There's going to be measurements involved. Now, what we've done for you, and you'll need to click the link in this video down below, because I want you to download the pages and pages of notes that I've done for you. So each of the different sashings that I'm going to show you in this episode and the next one, there will be notes to accommodate every single sashing that you make. I would love for you to put them in a folder for resources, even make a little sample to go with the notes. So if you want to make a quilt in the future and you want to think, now, which way would I like to join this together? What sort of sashing would I make is going to suit this? If you've got little samples made, put them with the notes. Put it together as a resource for you for future projects. So don't forget, download those notes. It's very, very important because I'm not going to give you many measurements in this episode because it's hard for you to run around and get a pencil and write them all down. So that's why we want you to download the notes. But to start with, when I do any piecing, like when we start to put the quilt together, when we start to sew strips for the different sashings to combine different colours together, I use a normal thread. I love to use the Roxanne thread. I'm making my quilt out of white and a variety of blues. I find a grey thread blends into all of your colours beautifully. I choose not to have a lot of different threads, but any piecing I do on any quilt I make, I have 3 shades of grey, light, medium and dark, and that's what I use for all my piecing. It just saves on buying a lot of different coloured threads. We are going to, use rotary cutters, so you make your choice. I love to use the little tiny 18mm one. When I cut the batting or the wadding to put inside the sashings, you will need a bigger cutter because the little blade won't go through the thickness of the wadding. So have your little cutters handy, have good blades in them because you want to get a nice clean cut. When I piece my sashings together, I'm going to use the 1/4 inch foot for my Vanina machine, and I like the one that's got the little ledge that comes down the side of it so I can keep the edge of my fabric right up against the edge of that ledge to get me a perfect 1/4 inch seam, because that's going to be very important. Measurements in making a quilt you go quilt is just like piecing any other normal quilt. Accuracy is the key point. We've introduced you to the fabric marking pencils, the Bohin ones that I love to use. You'll be using these throughout making your sashings, because you'll need to mark out some different placement areas for different things we're going to do. We're going to use the Roxanne glue. This is going to be very important to hold the sashings between the blocks for you to be able to sew them accurately. I find pinning our sashings on through all the thicknesses of the quilting and the sashings and all what we're going to do, the pins create too much distortion. So make sure you've got a bottle of the Roxanne glue basted. Any of these products I'm showing you here are available on our website, so click on that link to find where that is. Good unpicker. I always say to be a great quilter, you've got to enjoy unpicking. So get yourself a really good unpicker. Or reverse sewer, if you want to call it that. I love the Clover one because I love the little flat round handle that it's got on it. It's very easy to get in under the stitches. Good pair of tweezers, good pair of sharp tweezers is always good because there's going to be some fine detail that I'm going to be showing you. So the tweezers become like your third hand. They help you out a lot. We're going to use the fork pins, the double fork pins. They're going to be very, very important. So make sure you've got some of those and you'll learn lots about them because they are the best pins ever invented, in my opinion. I love those. We're going to use the Sasher collection. Now we're basically going to use 4 or 5, maybe 6 or 7 different sizes because we're doing a sampler. These ones here are what we developed originally. There was a lot more to them, but they were originally in this fluoro colour. But we have changed that out now and we've got them in the multicolours. So if you've got the fluoro set, they are perfectly fine. Or if you've got the new combination of colours, use those. You don't have to have both, just one or the other. So we're basically going to focus on the 2.5, the 2, the 1, the 1/2 inch and the 1/4 inch. They're basically the ones that we'll be using for most of the sashings. And we'll be going on to different sizes for the bindings and when we do a few other things. So we're going to use those sashes. These are the 2 rulers that I love to use for cutting out all my sashings. This gives me the nice width that I need. This one here, as I show you different things I do with this through the episode, you'll understand why this one is so brilliant for doing your little fine detail work. So they're the rulers. As we develop through the this episode and the next episode, we're going to be using templates for some of the sashings. This rotating mat is a godsend. It is just brilliant. So love to introduce you to that. I love this one because it doesn't wobble. A lot of the rotating mats I found when I put pressure on one side, it would lift up on the other side. This one's got a great suction underneath, so it does not move while I'm using it. Then, oh, now I can't even get it off the table. Then we're going to be referring to my book. And this I find is for anybody that doesn't own it, I would recommend it because as we go through and I mention different settings, different measurements, and inside here there is a cutting chart. I've just got to find what page I put it on. I can never remember that. But there is a cutting chart in here to teach you all your different measurements. Some of the measurements will be in the notes, but if you've got it here, you'll have it forever. As we go through and make the different sashings, the spare pages in this book is where you can write your own instructions for the settings you put onto your machine. That's why I've left the spare pages. So this is a great resource book. And we're going to use the 6-fingered stiletto because we're going to use this as we make a lot of the sashings. This is a new product that I've just found and I don't know why I didn't know about it years ago. It is absolutely brilliant. So I'll be showing you the use for that. But that's enough about products. I want to get you into the lesson. I want to teach you as much as I possibly can. So remember, the notes are going to be very, very important. Now to talk about the measurements. If we're going to be making a 2-inch sashing, okay, this tool has got the 2 inches written on the top. All the Sasher tools are your finish measurement. And the rule of thumb with 99% of the sashings I'm going to show you, we're going to cut the fabric double the width of the finish measurement. So I want a 2-inch finish sashing. So I need to cut my fabric 4 inches wide. So in the notes, when you download them, it'll tell you what size to cut your fabric for what style of sashing you'll do, and I'll give you an approximate length. But I want you to check the measurements of your blocks because, you know, all things happen as we make things. Yours might turn out a bit longer, a bit narrower. They might be a little bit different. Do what I do. Take caution and always add a little bit more because you can always trim your sashings back. But if they're too short, you've got to start again. So always make them a bit longer, even if you make them a bit longer than what I write in your notes. Do that because that will help you having to go back and remake it. So they're just a few little tips. But I'm going to show you, first of all, how to make a sashing strip. So this is just a plain white fabric, as you can see. I want it to be 2 inches finished, so I've cut it 4 inches wide by a bit longer than the block. I'm just going to bring my little ironing mat in. Now what we're going to do, make sure your fabric's pressed nicely. Whoops, my cord is all tangled up. Make sure it's pressed nicely to get rid of any of the creases. Now we're going to fold. If you've never used one of these before, what we do is we're going to fold each edge in till it meets in the middle. So if you're using a floral fabric or a printed fabric, you would have the wrong side facing up to you. If you want, you can always find the middle and just do a finger press at both ends. But once you get used to using these, you won't need to do it. Fold into that middle point, fold into the middle point. With your hot iron, press the first couple of inches. Now, you probably say, why do I need a Sasher tool? I want this to end up perfectly level all the way through because I don't want a sashing on my quilt that's crooked. I could probably eyeball this and get it nice and even myself, but as we work through and we get our sashings that are a lot longer, you'll really appreciate why we need the Sasher tool. So I'm going to show you how the tool works now so that you know it for future reference. Sorry, I'll just press that again. We're going to hold the Sasher handle the Sasher tool by the handle, this little handle at the top. Doesn't matter which side it's up. If you're left-handed, it's the same for you as if you're right-handed. We're going to simply come up from the bottom. Now, a lot of people make the mistake of going down from the top. If you go down, it will not work. I've designed it so you come up from the bottom. We're going to go over that centre bar and we're going to go back down. And this is where this little tool is brilliant. If you are struggling to get it through, if you've got fingers like mine, it's a bit harder to get through, use something like this. We're now going to pin into the ironing surface. Now, this is where the double fork pin really comes into its own. If I use 2 separate pins, I'm obviously going to put them in separately and it will give me different tension on both sides of the fabric. So as I push this tool with the iron, I could expect one side of the fabric to stretch more than the other. I don't want that to happen. Sorry, I just need to get a better pin. Using the double pin, because it's double, it's very sharp, it's going to go so that it connects to either side of where I folded it. Bury the pin so your iron doesn't catch on it. I just leave them pinned into my ironing board. Usually when I'm making quilt, I just have a couple of the fork pins on the ironing board, so when I want to go back and do it, just off I go. So now, we're not going to put the iron into the front of this. So if you're using your big normal iron, you can be tempted to put the iron into that little curve. That's not how I designed them. I've designed them for the side of the iron to touch the side of the Sasher tool. We're not going to push down. All we're going to do is hold this fabric and we're just going to gently slide. We're gliding. We're not pushing. We're not pushing down. We're gliding through. And it gives us an absolute perfect fold. And I know the white's very, very hard to see on the camera. But when we look at this, we can see that these two pieces are folded exactly in the middle. I didn't have to burn my fingers. I didn't have to have any problems happening. So there's any of the sashings, except for one of them, this is how you're going to make them. Once we've done that, we're going to need to fill this sashing with our batting. If we don't fill the sashing with the batting, when we put the quilt together, it's all going to be ridged in and out. So we need to put that in there. Now, this is a 2-inch finished. We need to cut our batting a smidgen smaller than this measurement. If we cut it exactly the 2 inches, when we open this up and lay the batting in here and fold it back over, we will lose this lovely crease line. So we're going to cut the batting 1/8 of an inch smaller. 2-inch finished, the batting is cut 1 7/8. But remember, all these measurements are in your notes. We're then going to put this in, fold it back, and then we're just going to press it, because remember, we're using the Hobbs Heirloom double-sided fusible batting. This is the reason why I use it, because it sits in there beautifully. If I was not using this wadding, I wouldn't be able to iron it in if I had a regular batting, and I could expect too much distortion happening when I start to sew it to the quilt. So now that is perfectly. So if I don't stitch this into the quilt for 12 months, that's just going to sit there, absolutely perfect for me. So that's the basic sashing made. Now, one of the sashings on all of the notes that I'm getting you to download, I'll be telling you what sashing goes between what blocks. So you'll be able to know that you're making a sashing to go between A1 and A2. Okay, so if we're doing A1 and A2, we're going to make 3 different size sashings. We're going to make the 2-inch, the 1-inch, and the 1/2 inch. Fabric cut 4 inches for the 2-inch. Fabric cut 2 inches for the 1-inch. Fabric cut 1 inch for the 1/2 inch. So you can see how it's all double measurements. We're going to lay this down on top of. We'll get our Roxanne glue basted, and all we'll do is run the glue underneath down both sides, go down the other side, press that with a hot iron, put this one on top. Now, you may be able to eyeball that to get the measurement exactly right, but this is where this little ruler is absolutely perfect, because we should have a 1/4 inch either side. So we can look with this ruler and just line everything up so that we get our measurements centered exactly. Takes a little few minutes, but you're going to end up with a perfect result. Once you get that glued together, hot iron, put it aside, then we'll be ready to join that between our blocks when we start to construct the quilt. That's a triple sashing. This next one here is, I call it a 4-up, because we've got a 2-inch sashing made, we've got an 1.5 inch sashing made, we've got a 1.5 inch made, and we're just going to glue all of those together. Now we've got 4 layers, and you can see how exciting it starts to get when you start layering up your fabric. It starts to mix all of those colours together to balance the whole quilt. But if you just want to make plain sashings to join your quilts together, so long as you follow the measurement for this bottom sashing, you'll be able to join the quilt together perfectly. Now, if we're going to do a sashing with a cornerstone, which we will be doing, we'll be cutting our measurement for our sashing to the width we want it and the length. We will then be cutting a rectangle. Oops, I thought I had the rectangle here, but I don't. We'll be cutting a rectangle, so it will be the width of the sashing by the size finish. So the rectangle is cut 4 inches by 2.5. Now that, once we seam that in with the 1/4 inch seam, it is now 2 inches. This is still 4 inches. If I'm going to put this through the sashing tool, the first thing I want to do, after I've sewed both of these seams, I put this on my ironing surface, and with a hot dry iron, I press the stitching line to set the stitches. because a lot of our threads will stretch. We don't want that happening. So we press it. Then I'm going to press the seam to the dark. So I'll put it down and press to the dark this side. Press to the dark. So that's sitting nice and flat. Then we'll fold this into the middle. And I'm going to bind this one for you because I want you to show you how the Sasher tool will go across the seams and how to make that go smoothly across those seams, because some of the sashings will have quite a few seams in them. So once again, we'll pin it into the ironing surface, the double pin. Just cup up the sides. Just turn this so you can see it. Put the iron against it. Now, as I get up close to this seam here, what I do is I start tapping the Sasher across that seam. And that's just rode across that seam beautifully. I wasn't pressing down, I was gliding it through. I'll bring the pin up and then I keep going. Tap, tap, tap. And we just keep going. Now, a lot of people get really, I don't know, a bit bothered. Sometimes your folds won't measure the same on both sides. That does not matter. If you end up with a 1/2 inch this side and 1 1/2 this side, that does not matter unless you're using a stripe or a directional print. The Sasher won't allow the width size to change. So don't worry about that. If it becomes different here, don't panic. Just keep pushing it, and once you've got it done, you'll have the perfect square. And then that's how we do a cornerstone when we're doing a sashing for Quilt As You Go, and it comes out beautifully. Put your wadding inside there or your batting inside, open it out, put the batting in there, press it over. Now you've got a beautiful sashing. So that's a cornerstone. Now, if we were going to make a 4-patch sashing, we're going to cut 2 different colours. Following the measurements that we have in your notes, you're going to seam those 2 pieces together with your 1/4 inch seam. Now, when I'm seaming things together like this, I want them to sit really, really nicely. So I reduce my stitch length down on my machine. I use a Bonina. It does have a little bit of a smaller stitch, but I reduce my stitch length down to 1.9 because I want really small stitches so that I don't see the thread showing on this side. Once we've got that done, we will press the stitching line all the way through. So just go all the way through, pop it on your ironing surface and gently push back to the dark. Then once we've done that, to get our cornerstone happening, we're going to make 2 pieces like this, 2 inches finish with your batting inside, like so. Then we're going to make another set like this, and from this set, we're going to cut 2 pieces 1.5 inches wide. So we're going to cut them off there. We'll just quickly do that. You can see this little ruler is so very handy for this sort of thing. 1.5 inches. I need to straighten up my edge, so I'll do that first because it's a little bit crooked. If I was on that rotating mat, but I've put that aside, it would have been easier using that rotating mat. 1.5. 1. So I'm lining one of the lines on my ruler on this stitching line. So I make sure I'm getting it nice and even. Oops, that one's cut the wrong measurement. How about that? Even I make mistakes, not thinking what I'm doing. So 1.5 inches. You're going to turn these around so they're going in opposite directions. Put them on top of each other. The seam should butt up so they're going in opposite directions. Make sure they're butting up nicely. Grab one of your fork pins and pop that pin so it goes either side of that stitching line. Now, when we sew across here, when I'm at the sewing machine, and in the next episode I'll be at the sewing machine so you can see some different things, this is where this tool's so handy. Because if this seam underneath wanted to flip back as it comes down, I can hold that seam so it's coming towards me in the right direction. As I sew over there, I can use this right to the end, so it holds the pieces right to the end where my fingers or a pin can't do that. We then are going to sew this unit together. Then we put that through the Sasher tool and we'll have a perfect, I'm just going to fold this over so you can have a look at it. That's how it would look. Once it goes through the tool, we're then going to line these up. So we'll be joining 2 blocks to here, 2 blocks to here, and then this will come through and we'll have a beautiful 4-patch sashing. But you're going to learn all of that in, not next episode, the one after, how we're going to construct all of this. We're then going to make a 9-patch sashing, same sort of thing. We're then going to cut some rectangles out. This is where we'll start to use up scraps of fabric. We're going to press the seam like I've showed you. We'll make as many as we need to fit the space. We'll put it through the Sasher tool and then we'll have our square sashings. So this is where we'll start to mix all of our colours to flow through. We're going to end up with a lot of little leftover pieces. So what I've been doing is joining them together randomly, very randomly. But I want this to finish at 4 inches. So once I make enough in length, I will get this rotating mat because it's so much easier to trim everything. But all I'll do is put my ruler down. I'll trim up the sides. I'm going to trim across here because I have to add more pieces to it to make it long enough. So now it's measuring just over, just spot on 4. So I'm just going to keep now adding pieces, seaming them across, folding them back, trimming them till I get it long enough. And then we have a lovely scrappy sashing. Look at that, love it. But that's how you can use up all your bits and pieces. Making a whole quilt like this with this sashing between them would look fabulous. Now, this is a tricky one, and I love it. So it's just kind of a checkerboard, but I've put a little trim between it to really highlight it. And I love using the batiks. This is the one fabric, but it's giving me, these 2 here come from the one piece of fabric. It's giving me really nice colour. The measurements you will follow, because we want, this is going to be a 3-inch sashing. So we'll need the 3-inch Sasher tool. We're going to cut your fabric to the measurement that we've got in the notes for you. You'll do the 2 different colours. You're going to cut a thin strip, which is 3/4 of an inch wide, of a contrast. You're going to seam it between your 2 pieces. You're then going to press the seams as I've showed you, and then you're going to cross cut this 1 3/4, and then we're going to join a small piece onto the side with our 1/4 inch seam. We're going to fold it and press it back this way, but that'll be in the instructions because you're going to get really good diagrams as well as the measurements. You're going to press it back this way. Now we want to join another piece on, and this is where it can get really tricky, lining these pieces up. So what I do there, I'm going to use the little ruler. I'm going to lay my ruler across this line here. Oops. Just lining it up exactly, and I'm going to put a mark. I'm going to bring it back this way. I'm going to put a mark. So now I've got 2 reference lines. So when I put this piece against it, these 2 stitching lines here, or these 2 edges here, have to line up with that. This is where you'll use your fork pins again. you will pin so that that is matching exactly, and pin that that's matching exactly. Or what I like to do, I like to start sewing here, and as I come down, I'm using this great little tool. I'm lining up underneath there, so those lines line up. When I come down to here, I make sure the next one's lined up. If one piece is a little bit longer than the other, I'll tuck that other bit, the bit that's a bit longer, back up underneath till it sits there. Then I'll hold with this tool till I get to the end. And it's amazing if you've got a little bit of slack there, how the machine feed dogs will take that up. So that's how I've created this lovely effect. So this will end up 6 inches wide when finished. You'll put it through the 3-inch Sasher tool, cut your batting 2 7/8, put it inside, and then you've got that beautiful sashing. Now, the last one I'm going to show you for this episode is what I call a sashing with a peeper strip or a flange. So we've got this little bit here. Now, this one's a little bit different in your measurements because we're not folding the white fabric right back to the back. We're starting off cutting our fabric. Our white fabric is cut 2.5 inches wide. Our little peeper strip is cut 1 inch wide. We're simply folding that in half, pressing it, and putting that through the 1/2 inch Sasher tool. So we get that nice straight strip for both sides. We're then seaming it on to our white with our 1/4 inch seam. We then will set the seam. Oops, it doesn't want to come off. Set the seam. Then we're going to fold this edge out. Just give it a little press. Fold this edge out, give it a little press. Now from edge to edge, it now measures 2.5 inches. I'll bring this board back. I'm going to use the 2.5 inch Sasher tool, pop it inside, back down. We're going to use 2 of the fork pins. One, this side's going to catch the blue, one side's going to catch the white. Same again on the other side. So we want that little peeper strip or the flange, whatever you call it, to hold there nicely. Hold your fabric nice and firm. Push with the iron. Just tap it along as you go. Oops, I've ran off skew there for some reason. Just let me fix that. Right, now I've got it right. So we just keep tapping it down till we get that lovely sashing with the flange. Let me get that out, So we've got our flange. I'll pull those pins out. And when I've taught this in hands-on classes, people love doing this style of sashing. Look at that. You've got your nice little flange there. Now what we're going to do next is we need to open this back out. From seam line to seam line is measuring 2 inches. So we're still going to cut our batting a little bit smaller than the 1 7/8. Just take another little shave off. It's a really odd measurement, but we're able to just take another little bit off. Open this out, lay it inside. And like if you've got bits and pieces of batting left, don't be afraid if you can't get the full length that you need out of the piece you've got. You can butt your batting up against each other. In some of the sashings I'll show you next time, you're going to see that. So we're going to just put this down and then we're going to press. Now the iron's not sticking to the batting, so don't panic. You're not going to mess your iron up. But that now is going to fill out that sashing nicely for us. So we've got that nice sashing. You see I've done a great big long one here for the quilt. We've got that really nice sashing now when we put it to the quilt, we may go back and do some quilting in here. But in the next episode, I'm going to show you some other little sashings that you might be able to do something different with this. So that's a lot to show you. I know it's very quick, so keep watching this episode so that you can understand it a bit better. But remember, when you log on and go to this episode 10, please click the link to download those workshop notes, because they'll be very important, because you need the little graphics, you need all the little hints and tips that I can't give you on the video when we've got to do it and show you so many things. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed the quilting journey so far, and let's get all this done so that we can join all your quilts together and give you a beautiful, exquisite quilt that you'll be very, very proud of. And I think if you keep practicing that quilting, you'll be a brilliant quilter, but you're not going to try and do that big quilt. This way you can break any quilt down into a quilt as you go. So thank you for joining me, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.